First, let's start with this case. My wife is an avid collector of mid-century bric-a-brac. She finds these items all over Facebook Marketplace and in thrift stores. Some of the pieces can be quite valuable to the right buyer, and she takes great pride in her collection. The problem is that it's all over the house. These items are stacked precariously in places where my stepdaughter and I need to function daily. On countertops, tables, open bins in closets, the floor, even on the bed. I've asked her several times to store or protect her collection properly, especially the more valuable pieces, to prevent damage or clutter. However, my requests haven't led to any changes. Today, while trying to rehang a closet door on its track, I lost my balance and fell backward into one of the many piles of her items. Unfortunately, I broke a wicker sconce that was buried under a stack of other things. She was incredibly upset because she spent $400 on these sconces, which she claims are worth $1,500 despite them already being incomplete and missing pieces. One of the reasons they weren't displayed in the first place. I apologized and genuinely feel bad for breaking something she values, but my frustration with the situation is growing. If something is truly valuable, I believe it should be stored or protected properly, not left in a chaotic pile that looks indistinguishable from other clutter. Her response to the incident felt disproportionate given the circumstances. I'm usually very careful and respectful of her collection, but it feels like I spend a significant amount of time moving her items around just to get basic tasks done. Sometimes, I can't even begin a project because it takes an hour to clear the space first. Am I the idiot for feeling fed up with the constant clutter and what I see as traps scattered throughout the house? While I respect her hobby, I find the lack of organization and the disruption to our shared spaces increasingly frustrating. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. I'm a hoarder, and that's hoarding behavior. It's fine to have collections. It's fine to have expensive or multiple collections. When you can no longer store them appropriately is when it becomes hoarding. Something that is breakable and worth $1,500 to her should not be on the floor where it could get broken. You're not in the wrong. Collections are either displayed or carefully stored away in protective material. If she doesn't resell these things for a profit, she is a straight-up hoarder. She must get professional help for this, as it is a mental illness. Don't be angry if she is a hoarder. That is like being angry at someone because they have diabetes. However, if she refuses to get treatment and continues this destructive behavior and it negatively affects the relationships with you and her daughter, you are justified in being angry. This doesn't sound like collecting, but hoarding. You're not in the wrong. And maybe get professional advice on how to deal with someone who is a hoarder? Next up, for context, I'm a 19-year-old from the United States, currently a second-year university student in the UK. My boyfriend is 23, British, and recently finished his master's degree. He's now working full-time. We've been together for 10 months, and he's my first boyfriend. He's been incredibly kind, supportive, and understanding throughout our relationship. I've also met his family twice, and both experiences were wonderful. His mom even told him she thinks I'm the one. In late November, he asked if I'd like to spend Christmas with his family. He said everyone would love to have me there, and while I thought it was a sweet gesture, I declined. I've been feeling homesick and wanted to spend Christmas, a holiday that means a lot to me, with my family in South Dakota. When I told him, he seemed distant for a few days. Later, I went to his place to reassure him. I told him I'd love to visit his family another time, but explained that, for me, Christmas is a family holiday. Looking back, I realized that might have sounded dismissive. He looked hurt and asked, "Do you still love me? And aren't I your family?" I reassured him that I do love him and that our relationship means a lot to me. Things seemed fine after that conversation. About a week later, he surprised me by showing me a flight he'd booked to South Dakota for Christmas. Flights to South Dakota are expensive, especially internationally, and while I appreciated the gesture, I thought it was impulsive. I told him it wasn't a good idea. This upset him, and for the first time, he got really emotional. He accused me of not caring about him, not being serious about us, and thinking only of myself, all of which aren't true. I know he was speaking out of hurt, so I calmly suggested he take a walk to cool off. When he returned, I explained that he means the world to me, but I wasn't ready for him to meet my family yet. The truth is, I'm worried about how my family would react. I'm white, he's Arab, and my family, who live in rural South Dakota, have limited exposure to diversity. In the past, they've made ignorant, borderline racist comments. While they'd probably be polite to his face, I'm afraid they might say something offensive or inappropriate. They also have incorrect assumptions about Arab culture, like automatically assuming someone is Muslim, he's Christian. Their ignorance embarrasses me, and I don't want him to be hurt or uncomfortable. I didn't tell him any of this. Instead, I said that in my family, bringing someone home for Christmas is often seen as a precursor to engagement. This is true, but it wasn't the full story. He asked if he wasn't good enough, and I reassured him that he's perfect, but I wasn't ready for this step yet. That's when he mentioned the tickets were non-refundable. I felt awful. I started crying, apologizing for wasting his money and explaining that I do want him there, just not this Christmas. He asked me to leave, saying he needed some space. I flew home nearly a week ago, and since then we've had brief phone conversations. He still texts me, "I love you" and "good night," but it's clear he's hurt and distant. I don't know how to fix this or how to reassure him. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong for what you did, but you're in the wrong for not explaining why. Everyone is different in their timelines, but after dating for 10 months, it's pretty normal to want to meet the family of your partner. I totally get why you didn't want him to come, but he doesn't get it because you didn't explain it. He probably feels like it's because of him instead of it being because of your family, and I can see that being really hurtful. Especially if he's the kind of guy who is close with his family. It's totally bonkers to just book an international flight without checking with you, though. Like, dude, what are you doing? I'm going with, everyone sucks. You're 19. Live life a little. I'm not saying you can't meet the love of your life at that age. You could have met that person when you were 10 and still not be in the path for marriage at 19. You've been together for 10 months. His mom telling him you could be the one? At 19? I know he's 23, and the difference is not big, but every reaction he's had and argument you have quoted he told you sounds manipulative to me. I could be wrong, but he could be hurt without throwing the, "Am I not important? Am I not your family? I'm so sorry, but at 10 months calling himself your family sounds weird." You could have told him that you didn't want him to come because of your family's prejudice and ignorance, that you can't change them and you don't want to expose him to that, and that would have been a sufficient explanation. But I still can't get over the fact that him being 23 thinks he's family to a 19-year-old girlfriend of 10 months. And the things he's stated sound a little too intense for me. Maybe too cynical of me, but my experience tells me the wording rings some alarm bells. You're still a teenager, albeit for a short time, but you're so young. Take time to live your life, with boyfriend or no boyfriend. Take time to know you, who you are as an adult who's starting the path of adulthood. Bold of him to book non-refundable plane tickets without talking to you. Pretty huge red flag, Dubai. You've been together 10 months. He needs to chill out. This seems controlling and clingy. When you get back, you need to be honest with him that you weren't sure your family would behave, and also that you felt him buying tickets was presumptive and moving too fast. You're 19. You don't need to rush things, and he needs to respect your boundaries. Next up, I'll try to keep this short. In February 2019, I bought a 1967 Impala 4-door, a car I've always wanted to restore. A few months ago, I bought my first house, which has a 2.5-car garage. I moved the car in and began tearing it down for a full restoration. The body was in one bay, the chassis in another, and the entire garage was filled with parts. About 2 months ago, my girlfriend moved in with me during this crisis. She's always hated the car and complained that she couldn't park in the garage. I have 2 acres of land with plenty of shaded areas for parking, or even a barn if it absolutely needed to be inside. I told her the garage was dedicated to my restoration project and that I couldn't just throw the car back together quickly. She wasn't happy, but I thought we'd agreed to disagree. Last week, I went out of town for a few days on a business trip. When I returned, My girlfriend was overly cheerful, making me food, doing all the chores, and being unusually attentive. I thought she was just happy I was home, but I noticed her car wasn't in its usual spot. When I asked her where she parked, she said not to worry because she'd moved it into the garage. Confused, I went to check. To my horror, I found the garage empty. While I was gone, she had hired people to come over and haul away everything related to the car, the body, chassis, drivetrain, and all the parts, to a local junkyard. She was smiling as she proudly told me what she had done. I was absolutely dumbfounded. I've spent over $11,000 on this car, including new parts, services, and the vehicle itself. When I confronted her, she brushed me off, calling the car just a piece of junk. She claimed I was being dramatic and said it wasn't a big deal. Furious, I told her we were done and that she needed to pack her things and leave. I also told her I'd be taking her to court. I have all the receipts for my expenses and security camera footage of her letting the junkyard crew into the garage and supervising the removal. Her family and friends have been bombarding me with messages, telling me to let it go because it's just an old car and she can't possibly pay me back. But I've spent a year and a half of my time, money, and effort on this restoration, and I refuse to let it go. Edit. Thank you all for your support. I got a call from her mom, who told me I'm ruining her daughter's life over a stupid car. I told her that her daughter made her own choices. I've gathered my documentation and headed to the police station to file a report. Update. The police officially accepted my report for grand larceny and grand theft auto. I provided all my receipts, the car's title in my name, and the security footage. They assured me they would contact all involved parties, including my ex and the junkyard. Huge update. They found my car. The junkyard employees were in the process of hiding it when the police arrived to question them. The car was on a forklift, ready to be placed on top of a pile of cars hidden behind others. They claimed it was theirs, but they didn't have the title. The police matched the VIN on the chassis and body to the VIN on my title, confirming it was mine. At least one person at the junkyard has been arrested, though I'm unsure of the specific charges. The police are now investigating the junkyard for other potentially stolen vehicles. They haven't been able to reach my ex yet, but they're working on it. I haven't been allowed to take my car home yet, as it's being held as evidence, but I'm so relieved it's been found. I documented the restoration process extensively with photos, which I hope will help prove ownership of all the parts. Thank you all for the advice and encouragement. My car is safe, and justice is being served. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. Sue her. Sue her for the cost, plus a few extra thousand for the time and money. Have her prosecuted for theft, destruction of private property, and have the guys that came to get it prosecuted for receiving stolen goods. Nail them all to the wall. You're not in the wrong. Holy hell. Definitely not the idiot. That's like your girlfriend selling a dog out from under you while you are on a business trip because she didn't like it. The audacity. If she didn't like it, she could have just ignored it. The most toxic part is that she sees no issue. Your property, your house, she throws it away? And if any judge knows the worth of that car, they would understand suing her for the costs, let alone the time you spent on it. That's a hobby, and a damn good one. If she couldn't support you and your project, that probably would have been a red flag for anything you do later on. I think this is all justified. You're not in the wrong. My husband has several old cars. I haven't seen the inside of the garage in 20 years. But he loves his hobby cars, and I would never dream of asking him to lose one. I say take her to court. Be sure you sue for replacement cost. The Impalas are getting hard to come by, and you may have to pay more than you think. Oh, and congrats on dodging the bullet with that one, if she pulled this crap in the first year. Just think what she would be trying after a couple of kids and 10 years of marriage. Next up, I, 23, and my boyfriend, 23, have been playing 7 Days to Die together for about a week. But recently, we started playing the newly launched game Marvel Rival. He's become really into it and plays it every day, while I still enjoy playing 7 Days to Die occasionally to relax. The issue is, I don't enjoy playing it alone. Last Friday, I asked him to play 7 Days to Die with me, and he agreed. However, when the time came, we ended up playing Marvel Rival instead because he was more in the mood for that game. Since then, I've mentioned wanting to play 7 Days to Die a couple of times, but we never set a specific day to do it. Today, I brought it up again and asked if we could play 7 Days to Die. He agreed, but then mentioned he had already promised to play Marvel Rival with one of his friends, who had been waiting for a couple of hours. He asked if I could wait until 10 p.m. to play 7 Days to Die with him. Here's where I might be in the wrong. I got upset and told him I would just play alone because I didn't want to wait anymore, especially since I'd already been waiting for a week. He said I was being impatient and unfair, pointing out that it wouldn't be right to ditch his friend. But I couldn't help feeling frustrated because he had already ditched me last Friday to play Marvel Rival. My frustration stems from 2 reasons. I have a strict bedtime of midnight, so starting at 10 p.m. wouldn't leave enough time to really enjoy the game. It feels like he prioritizes his friend over me, as he's okay with postponing our plans, but not his friends. He argued that his friend had been waiting longer and that I could wait just a couple more hours. However, I feel like I've already been waiting for days, and it's unfair for him to expect me to wait again. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. Your BF shouldn't expect you to wait if he isn't available. If it's that important, then he can make it a priority and give you time. Let him know your preference is to play/hang out with him, but that if he unavailable, you will carry on by yourself. It's selfish of him to demand the time he wants with friends and for you to twiddle your thumbs and wait, especially after a week of asking and you giving in to play the game he wanted instead. You're not in the wrong. My husband pulls similar stuff with me for Fortnite all the time, and it makes me super mad. You're too tired to play with me, but the guys text you 20 minutes later and you're super hyped to play? I know they are more skilled than me, but still, would it kill you to join me on something you pushed my getting into in the first place? The exclusion really hurts my feelings. I get it, truly. And again, you're not in the wrong, and I'm sorry. You're not in the wrong. I'm a huge wargame person on Xbox, even Marvel Rivals. But if I can sit down with my wife for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours and play Mario Party Stardew, that's what I want. Realistically, he's been gaming with his buddies how many times and for how long? Like, cool, he can do that, and I love to do that too. But there's also something called quality time with your significant other. No matter how it's spent, it's needed.